Welcome to another Real Python code conversation. I'm Philipp, your host for today's session about a very special advent calendar, Advent of Code. An advent calendar is typically something where you count down the days until Christmas by getting a little chocolate or a little something every day. Advent of Code is an advent calendar full of programming puzzles. And today you'll open a door to an older Advent of Code advent calendar and tackle one of the programming puzzles you find there. You won't be alone in this. Joining me today is Arne, a Real Python team member as well, and a prolific Advent of Code Gold Star collector. Hi, Arne.
Hey, Philipp.
Today, I want you to walk us through one of the former Advent of Code coding puzzles. But before we do so, maybe you can tell the viewers a bit more about Advent of Code in general.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, Advent of Code is something that's been running for many years by now. And it lives on the adventofcode.com internet page. The whole Advent calendar was started back in 2015 by a guy called Eric Wassel, and he's been doing fantastic stuff on this site since then. So by now, every December, there's some 200,000-300,000 people participating in Advent Code. As you said, Advent of Code is an Advent calendar where there are small programming puzzles that test your skills every day. And one of the cool things with these puzzles is that you can solve them in any programming language. So today we'll be using Python, but you can use really anything that you want to solve this puzzle because, as you'll see later, you'll just get some puzzle and puzzle input, and then you just need to figure out what's the answer for your code. So you only input the answer. So you don't show any code to solve these puzzles. So that brings a lot of freedom for you.
And that means Advent of Code is a good event for you if you want to try out a new programming language besides Python to get a little bit into it. But yeah, since we're here at realpython.com, let's stick with Python for today.
Yes, yeah, no, exactly. I've been using it to kind of practice some other programming languages as well. So it's really fun. And one of the cool things is that because it's so popular, you can always find other people doing the puzzles and kind of discuss with them your solutions and so on. We do have a discussion forum like that in the Real Python community, but there's also other places online that you can find these discussions.
And yeah, it starts on the 1st of December and goes until the 25th, like you said, like an advent calendar. The one for this year will be unlocked on the 1st of December only, but you can already go back to former events and do a bunch of puzzles. So I didn't do the math, but it's basically the 9th year running, and every time there are 25 puzzles. And this gives you a big number, let's say it like this, a big number of coding puzzles that you can dive into. And today we want to dive into one as an example to show you how Advent of Code works, because the general atmosphere, let's say it like this, of the Advent of Code event is always very similar.
Yes, so if you go to the adventofcode.com website, you might see something like this where it just tells us that the first puzzles will unlock on December 1st. But then we can go back to past events. So it kind of links to the events either on top or here. Or if you come here after December 1st, you'll already see the Advent calendar displayed on the front page. If you go to let's go to 2022, and then this is the Advent calendar for 2022, and we can kind of see that there are 25 lines, and behind each of these doors, so to speak, there is a programming puzzle. We can have a look just at the text if we go into day one. And the way these events work is that every year there's a different backstory, typically about something that you need to do to save Christmas in some kind of way. And for 2022, essentially we need to help Santa's reindeer get all their magical energy that they need to deliver presents on Christmas.
Okay, and this energy is provided by some special type of snack, the star fruit.
Exactly. So yeah, every year somehow the story ends up being that you need to collect 50 stars, as we can see here. These stars is something that you earn by solving puzzles, and each puzzle grants 1 star. And we just said that there were 25 puzzles, but there's 50 stars here. And that's because every day there are actually 2 puzzles. And as it says down here, we collect stars by solving puzzles. And then the second puzzle for a day is only unlocked once we complete the first one. And we'll see that this is kind of a fun little extra challenge. And then each puzzle grants 1 star. So each part for a day grants 1 star. So typically you want to get 2 stars each day.
Perfect. And yeah, the puzzle that we want to do today is the one for day 6 of 2022.
Yes.
The way how you as a viewer can tackle this course now is also go to the adventofcode.com/2022 site. You might need to log in to see this.
Yes, you need to log in. Essentially, we already logged into here. There's a login button up here if you haven't used it, and then you'll just use one other service like GitHub or Twitter or any of those to log in. And you need to register to use this because the input that you'll get is your personal input. So to check your solution, you need to log in.
When we click on the 6th day, then you see that there is a little story with the puzzle. And how you can use this course is to stop the course after we read the puzzle of this day and try solving it yourself before continuing with this course where you can see Geir Arne solving this puzzle. So that's another way of how you can exercise yourself with this video course. But it's also perfectly fine to just lean back and hear my voice and see Geir Arne programming and hear his voice. So whatever you do with this course, you will do it right.
Yes. And many of these challenges are also presented in such a way that you can solve them using several different approaches. So even though we will kind of show 1 or 2 approaches here, you can also solve this puzzle in other different ways. So that's also a kind of fun challenge to yourself to just see if you can come up with different solutions.
So usually day 1 of the Advent calendar, the puzzles start fairly straightforward and they get more and more advanced during December. So here we are at day 6. So we are still in the beginning stages, getting warm. And as you can see on the screen right now, there is a big blob of text where you see the context for the day 6 puzzle. And that's actually, again, a very lovely thing of this Advent calendar is you don't just get a puzzle and need to solve it, but it's a story that evolves over December. And here on day 6, we kind of have some tuning trouble.
Yes, so far in the story, we have been hanging around with the elves to kind of going through a dense forest, I believe, and looking for the star fruits. And in this particular day, we're kind of moving through the forest, and then we're getting access to a device. One of the elves gives us a device where we need to set up a communication system. And then usually you can kind of skip over the story, but as Philipp said, it's one of the fun parts of the whole Advent Code experience. But here, essentially what it comes down to is that to be able to communicate with the elves, the device needs to lock onto their signal. So we need to figure out how can we lock onto a signal. The signal is a series of seemingly random characters that the device receives one at a time. And to fix the communication system, we need to add a subroutine to the device that detects a start of packet marker in the data stream. In this protocol, a start of packet is indicated by a sequence of 4 characters that are all different. So that's kind of what we're looking for. One really nice thing with these puzzles as well is that they give us a worked out example. So even if all of these words didn't completely make sense to us, we can kind of see an example that's coming beneath here. So for example, suppose we receive the following data stream buffer. So that's these seemingly random characters. And then they say that, okay, if you look at the first 3 characters, MJQ, that there haven't been enough characters to find a marker. So we're looking for 4 different characters. And then the first time a marker could occur is after the 4th character has been received, making the most recent 4 characters MJQJ. But here J is repeated, so this isn't a marker. So remember what we're looking for is 4 consecutive characters that are all different. So the first time that we see a marker in this particular example, they say here is after the 7th character arrives. So if we look at this, we can see that the first 4, we have J repeated, and that's also true if we look at the characters from 2 to 5. Then when we get to 3 to 6, we see that the Q is repeated. And then finally, once we come down to the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th character, we see that these 4 are different. JPQM. So in this case, we should then create a subroutine that reports the value 7, because the first start of packet marker is after 7. And then they add in a few more examples. And our question then is kind of stated here once more. How many characters need to be processed before the first start of packet marker is detected? And then it says here, to begin, get your puzzle input. And this I can now click on. And what you'll see here is that the actual data stream that we'll be working with is a fairly big one. So that's all of these characters. But before we start worrying about that, we'll just look at the examples that they have for us here. So our first task is essentially, let's implement this and see if we can get the answer 7 from this text.
Yeah, I think that there are many interesting things happening. And one big task that you have to do when you're seeing this puzzle is basically filter out what's actually wanted from you. And there are some hints on the page with emphasized words. And of course, in the end, the actual question, what you need to do. But I think the first time you're looking at a puzzle and you see like this paragraphs of text that's very intimidating about what is actually the task of this. That's the fun part of it, basically going deeper and deeper into it and then understanding what the puzzle is and how to solve it. And as you just mentioned, it's a good idea to start with the example string that's given there, or like there are even a few more examples down there, because that way you can verify that the code that you will write in a moment will have the same solution as the example there. Because with your input, like Arne was showing, you get like a much bigger string, and the result will be some number that you then need to input on this page. But before you get there, it's a good idea to first verify that your code works with the provided examples, and then go into the big blob of provided input text.
Yes. So should we try to code something?
Yes. So copy the example string from the Advent of Code page and then jump into your editor.
Here I'll just, let's call it stream. Here's at least the example stream that we had. I've already created a file here that I'm calling AOC 2022-06, so that I have my file that I'll be running. Let's, just to see that we have something running here, I'll just print out the stream down here so that we can see. Let's see, I'm not in the correct place.
See, that's always a good thing of testing where you are.
Exactly. I'm gonna just print out the stream, save the file, and then let's try to run the code just to see that we have something up and running. So there we're printing out the stream. Of course, that's not what our task was. So what are we going to do here? We're going to look for a combination of 4 consecutive characters and check that they're all different from each other. Let me start with one solution here where I'm just going to pick up the first 4 characters. I'm just calling them first, second, third, and fourth character. And then I'll just have the rest, I guess. And I'm taking these from the stream. So what I'm using here is just this unpacking of sequences in Python. So since stream is a string, which is a sequence, what I'm doing here is that I'm taking the first character, which will be M first, and then second will be J, third will be Q, and the fourth will be J again. And then this star means that, okay, now just give me the rest of them. So that will then be everything from P there until the end.
So the last variable that you defined there is asterisk rest. So
yeah,
it's not just a star, but it's actually like a star in front of a variable name.
Yes. So the star is kind of like a syntax, and then rest is a variable. So that means that I can look at the first 4 characters, and at this stage, that means that the marker would be 4 if all of these are different.
Could you print the first, second, third, fourth, and the rest for a moment so we can see what they are?
Yes. So instead of the stream, we'll print first, second, third, fourth, and then I'll print rest on a separate line, I guess. So now if we run this again, we can see here that first, second, third, and fourth, those are individual characters, while the rest is now actually not a text string anymore, but it's a list of characters. So it kind of exploded all the characters into a list. Now I want to compare these. Do something like if first is different from second, or first is different from third, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think instead of continuing like this, I'll do something quite similar. And I'll just say that if any of these comparisons are true, so I'm kind of reversing them. So if first is equal to second, or first is equal to third, or first is equal to fourth, or let's see, second is equal to third, or second, and now I'll continue this soon, but I'll just get some auto-formatting in place here. Second is equal to fourth. There we go. And then I think the last one we need to check is whether the third character is equal to the fourth character.
Yeah.
So if any of these happen to be true, that means that we haven't found the marker, because that means that they're not all different.
So let's quickly recap the code that you have there. So you started with a if statement, and then you used the any function. And any checks if anything in a sequence is true.
Yes. It's really a fancy way of writing many OR statements together.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it. So instead of what you started with or this, you just check like if any of them is true, then there is a character appearing again in the sequence of characters.
Right. And that means that we have a repeated character, which means that we just want to move everything one step ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, I'll add 1 to my marker. So now I'm moving the number that we're kind of reporting at the end. Now I want to also move all the first, second, third, and fourth things ahead. So that means that my new first character becomes what used to be the second character. So that means in this example, we used to have M as the first character, but now I'm going to want to move ahead so that J becomes my first character. And this J used to be the second character. So I'm just saying that, okay, now first is the old second. Then I can continue with the same logic. So my new second is the old third. My new third, that's the old fourth character. And then this is where it kind of becomes slightly different. My new fourth character, that's one that we need to pick up from the list of rest characters.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do something like this, where I take it from the first rest. But I also need to update rest. So I'll do this in a slightly different way, where I'll say that rest equals rest, like this. So here we're using the same star argument that we did earlier, meaning that, okay, let's pack everything that's left over into this variable. So in the end, this means that fourth will get the P from the list down there, and then the new rest is kind of updated to be everything from Q and to the end.
Okay, and interesting as well in your code right now is that the order of the statements, like first equals second, second equals third, and so on, is important.
Yes, exactly. So the order is important because if we would do something like doing second equals third first, then we're kind of overwriting old second before we're actually reading it. So these lines depend on the order that we're spelling them out in. That is true. So now we should be close to getting in our answer, actually, because, well, this is an if statement that's actually not exactly what we want, but we'll see what happens now if we just run this. We can see that we have moved on. So if we look here on the original, we had M, J, Q, J, P, and now we'd moved one step further, and the marker has become 5. I want to move like this until I actually find a place where we don't have any of these matching. So that means that as long as any of them are matching, we can continue. So I can change my if to a while statement. So that means that instead of just doing the check once, I'm checking continuously until my check fails, really. Let's try to run that one. And in this case, we can see that it's moved on to J, P, Q, M, which are all different. And it says that the marker number is 7. And if we remember from the web page, 7 was the correct answer for this particular example.
Okay, so before that, you had the if statement. That was basically to verify that the code works. But since it's only an if statement, you basically run the code. The if statement is executed once, and then the marker goes one step further, and then your code stops. And since you don't know where the marker is, so where the first 4 characters that are different appear, you need to put it into some kind of loop.
Right.
You could have, for example, we don't need to write this down right now, but you could have used a for loop and loop through the whole string and then have the if statement inside of the for loop body. But since you actually just care about the first appearance of the 4 unique characters, you use a while loop because you go step by step by step further until the statement is not true anymore. That means that all the comparisons return false, and then you step out of the while loop. And that's basically the solution that you need right there.
Exactly. This is meant now we can... Yeah, I guess we can keep also the printing out the marker. Makes sense. The actual characters and then the number. And now we can move on to actually checking this for the puzzle input. Now we have checked our example. We could also check further examples.
Yeah, maybe you can pick one of them and try it out.
Yeah. So let's check this one, for instance. It says that the answer should be 10. So then I'll just go in here. I'll store it like this, and let's comment out the previous one. For this example, we should get the answer 10, which seems to leave us there, I think. So we should get our FNT in 10, which we can see here. So that also seems to work well with the code.
Okay. So it seems like the code is ready for the big input.
Let's try it. I'll click Get Your Puzzle Input. And this particular link will only be available if we have logged in, like I've done. So if you don't see this, it just means that you haven't logged in yet. So you need to log in. Then this is now a very long string, but I'll just copy it and then move it over to my editor, and then I'll type it in here inside of the quotes, and then we can try to run it again. So I'll save and run the code. And here it says that it found a marker FMWG at position 1538.
Okay, just like to clarify, like at position 1538. So it's a way more long string than before.
Yes, exactly. And I guess we could even here search in our string FMWG, and we can see that indeed there is a marker far out here that says FMWG. So it seems like we're at least not inventing characters.
Yeah, and there is an interesting part here as well, because if you just see the short example strings, you could say like, why do I need a program for this? I can just look at the string and solve it myself. But now you have a string that's way longer. So that's why it's worth learning Python or any other programming language to let Python do the work here.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think for this one, it's, I guess, still humanly possible to find this marker, but it's a very fun task. It's more fun to actually code it up. Let's put it into the website and see what happens.
Yes. So now you got 1538 back. And this number you now take and go back to the website and put into the input field for the solution.
Exactly. And then I can click Submit here. And after thinking a little bit, it tells us that that is the right answer. And we have actually collected 1 gold star. We're 1 gold star closer to collecting enough of the star fruit. And you can also see up here, it started counting my stars. And I may now continue to part 2. And if I scroll up here, we can still see this is the puzzle as we saw it. So there's actually just more text available now under part 2. And it also changed here now from asking me what's the answer to just reminding me that my answer was 1,538. This second part, or 2-part combination, it's a fun twist to the puzzle, where sometimes it's just asking us to do more of the same. Sometimes it's kind of twisting the puzzle around in some fun way. And it's a little bit like when you're working with some other client or something like this, and that they're kind of changing the requirements in a project for you a little bit halfway through the project. So it's like a fun little extra challenge.
That is true. So yeah, so it's not that you have like 2 completely different puzzles each day, but the second part builds up on the first one.